Since this bug has pleasantly made itself a home inside my HUD, what we'll do is we'll use this as an example of when I talk about fighting inside the cone, right? You'll notice how, like, as I'm engaging this guy, he's at like the edge of this little cone here, right? Now if I S-turn across him this way, right, then I get to the bottom of that cone, then I S-turn him across him the other way, and what I'm doing is I'm fighting. See how, like, we're at the rate limit here because the edge of the cone. Now we come back in, rolling into him here. Again, edge of the cone. That's my deflections. Slowly bringing it back on target here. And again, right, see how I'm fighting him within this little cone here. As my corkscrew is nice and tight, you'll notice that my vector indicator is actually riding the edge of that little circle that's being put up on my screen, right? There we go. Now we got a little more forward thrust here because my angle is too wide. There, nice and tight. Again, right, bringing the vector indicator back. But I'm also putting my target inside that cone, right? Into that next turn. Again, right, edge of the cone, edge of the cone, edge of the cone. Up here, other side. Now we're on the other side of the cone. And boom, we've got him. But you see, I'm playing with him inside that little cone, right? And when he reaches the edges, of those cones, that's when I'm making my movements, right? So when I say visualize what it's like to fight inside, it's more accurately defined as the tunnel, you know? But if you imagine, you know, rolling around this little imaginary circle here and keeping my targets, you know, at the edge of that little circle as I move through, then it's kind of a better visualization of, like, fighting inside the cone, right? Because if my vector indicator is way out here down to the right or way up here over here, I'm creating a very predictable sweeping kind of motion, right? But if I keep my vector within this little imaginary like cylinder and I'm rolling around the edge of that cylinder as I'm shooting into it, and I'm, you know, I'm going from a clockwise roll to a counterclockwise roll to a clockwise roll, and I'm using that to move across the nose of my enemy's target relative to his position. That right there is the fundamental basics behind all counter maneuvering. And that's what a lot of people take a lot of time to kind of wrap their heads around, because when I say aim, counter maneuver, evade, it's because aim is number one. You've got to get this cone in front of your enemy, because then you can do relative counter maneuvers to best avoid fire. When you pull your nose off of a target and you start using your main thruster to start pushing through, that's because you're disengaging, because you've now either lost the fight or there's a new situation that's popped up or whatever the case may be. You need to disengage, right? So because this is ironically enough a glitch, but it does help us show a visual representation of what should be going on inside your head when it comes to understanding the fundamentals of relative counter maneuvering. And it's why aim is number one, because you got to get that cone on the target first, because then you can start relatively moving against it. So I hope that answers your question.
These maneuvers take time. It takes months and months of training to be able to visualize in real time in a PvP engagement when it comes to understanding the cylinder or the cone, right? But we were lucky enough to have our landing refuel HUD stuck in the on position, basically, which allowed us to keep that kind of visual representation of a circle for us here on this engagement. The point I want to drive home with this video is that creating deflections that go outside of that cone, unless you're forcing the rate, which means you're close enough to force the turn rate of your enemy fighter into an advantageous position or to get around them, you don't want to create deflections that are putting you outside of that invisible little cone. You want to stay nice and tight with inside the cone. You want to drill, essentially, with a corkscrew. You want to drill towards your opponent, and you want to make sure that you're putting them within a few degrees of your target, as if you had an imaginary circle and you use that to guide yourself in. These are fundamentals, as fundamental as can be, and it's the building block when it comes to understanding any kind of counter maneuvering, because all your counter maneuvers take place relative to the enemy's nose position to you, which means you must keep them within inside that little cone and make deflections based on their nose position, based on where you are inside that cone. This may be confusing, and possibly this video might not hit every mark, and some people might be confused, but don't feel bad. These things take time. Flying every day takes time. Getting better and better and better takes time. So don't beat yourself up if this doesn't come as second nature. When it comes to space combat in 6 degrees of freedom, it is truly like speaking another language. And for everybody who's taken the jump and the leap into understanding PvP, you've taken your first steps into a much larger world. And for that, we thank you, and we're proud to have you here. If these maneuvers or anything talked about today was above your head or too confusing, and you feel like you need to start from a beginning place, consider watching our welcome video, the modules that come with that, and our core skills playlist here on the YouTube channel to give you a solid foundation so that understanding more advanced concepts like fighting inside the cylinder, i.e. the cone, become a lot easier to understand and let you develop and grow as a pilot much quicker. As always, folks, take a look at our sponsor Predator Mounts and use the code Avenger1 if you'd like a discount. Thank you so much for all your love and all your support. The last couple weeks of stream have been pretty crazy, and it's nice to see everybody come out and say hi and show your support. From the bottom of my heart, I think I speak for everybody here at Avenger Squadron when I say thank you, and we hope to see you guys out for the next YouTube and the next Twitch. My name is Avenger1, and I'll see you next time.